It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, April 14th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that absolutely can believe the last game of the season went to OT. It's a very Flyers thing.
We made it. That's all I know. We survived.
We did, and we are going to talk about that last game of the season with the OT win, plus give our quick hot takes for the end of this Flyer season, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. We're also on Instagram there. That is where we post about the latest Flyers news and our episodes. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ is correct. We made it. We did it. And so did you out there too. So give yourselves a round of applause for making it through this season. And thank you for hanging in there with us all season long. Absolutely appreciate each and every one of you. We try and have as much fun with it as possible in these sorts of situations, and we're going to keep doing that, including on today's show, kind of wrapping up the season in a quick and dirty fashion. We talked on yesterday's show about Jonathan Toews and what was going on with him. I think that was the big news of the game, right? That Jonathan Toews is definitely not returning to the
We didn't know that
Blackhawks.
for sure. We were surmising that.
Yeah. So they made it official yesterday, and not sure what's ahead for him. We guessed he might retire due to some of the illness issues that he's had post-COVID, but who knows? He may try and get a one-year deal somewhere.
He might. If he does, it's probably Winnipeg. But again, he really struggled. He had a lot of his goals were early, like in the early part of the season. So we'll see. There's these mixed feelings that I get because we know everything that's gone on with the Blackhawks. But I cover a lot of guys, and I've covered him very early on, pre-draft and all of that. So yeah, it was interesting to see him play his last game as a Blackhawk.
On the Flyers side of things, we had Tony DeAngelo scratched again, as we knew. Darryl Williams was behind the bench for the Flyers, as was Justin Braun's dad, which was super cool. Everything they did for Justin Braun was
nice.
so
I mean,
lovely.
yeah, he's been real good for them. This is his last game, so good for him. He couldn't get that 200th point.
I know.
But whatever, they tried. It didn't happen. He had a good night, and that's good. You feel good about it because he was a real good guy and just a guy that showed up every game.
Yeah, exactly. Always did what was asked of him,
Yep.
and whether he got little ice time, no ice time, healthy, scratched, or in this game where he played over 20 minutes because they were trying to get him
Played on the
that
power play, played
point.
3-on-3. Yeah.
Yeah. He got a solo lap like a rookie
Yeah.
before the game, finishing his career 842 games played, 199 points.
Nice career.
Yeah, congratulations to Justin Braun on just a real solid career, and I hope he's on to some more good things in his
Yeah, me
life
too.
after this. It was really interesting that I felt like, I guess because it was his last NHL game ever, that Justin Braun got more um, deference and attention than JVR did, who's
Mhm.
likely played his last game as a Flyer. I mean, they talked about it a little bit, but it just kind of felt like a regular, that's the way this business works sort of thing with JVR, and it wasn't as heartfelt I would say.
Yeah, I mean, look, the expectations were much higher for JVR, and he didn't come through. Like, that's it. End of the day, he's a good guy. We could always say he's a good guy, but business-wise, point-wise, on the ice, he just didn't come through like he should have. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what it's been, and, he works really hard in terms of staying in shape, and
He
he's
does,
always,
and there's some things that have improved in his game, but his scoring is just down, That's
yeah.
all.
Yeah, there's nothing more than that. I just thought it was interesting given
Yeah,
more
you're
of the
right.
longevity with JVR and his relationship with the Flyers, how they kind of emphasize Braun over him. But as far as, more about the game itself, it was good to see Travis Konechny and Noah Cates and Owen Tippett finishing strong.
Mhm.
Just because those are the guys that you want to be playing well kinda heading into this off season. Man, that lob pass by Owen Tippett in the 3rd was
Nice.
very skilled, like, I was very impressed by it.
Yeah, but I do have to say this. I mean, I know everybody is counting on Konechny to be this guy for them next year. He's only got 2 years left on his deal. At some point, they're gonna have to decide whether they're actually going to keep him or they're actually gonna trade him. And so, that could be one of the hard decisions that happens in this offseason that not everybody's expecting to happen.
That's a fair point. I just think, especially because TK got injured toward the end of the season, to have him come back and have a 2-goal game,
No, no, it was good
like
for him. I mean, I'm
mhm.
sure he'll feel good about it. This was his best season. So, but yeah, I mean, you have to think about it now as far as trade value, probably isn't going to be any higher. So they might have to test that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one overtime goal will make Ivan Provorov's trade value go up, but we can certainly hope so.
Yeah, I just don't feel like he's going to be traded, but you're right. He is the second overtime winner, I guess he's had, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, good for him to try and finish it out strong. There's also mixed feelings with Ivan, but I've never taken away his playing from him, and
Yeah.
he's shown up every game, literally every game, and he's never been benched the whole year, so he made it.
Yep, he did. Before the game started, I thought it was a little weird that Felix Sandstrom was in net for
Hmm.
it. I really thought they would have put Hart in there to cap off the season and just kind of put a stamp on it that Carter Hart is the number one goaltender on this team. And so, unless he was hurt or something or
Why
a
do that?
little,
You don't even have your coach behind the bench. Everything's weird right now.
yeah, it was just a
Where have you
whole
ever seen
lot of weirdness.
Where have you ever seen in your life a coach not finish out the season behind the bench? The last 2 games of the season, he didn't finish out behind the bench. Where have you ever seen that before? I never have in
Well,
my whole life.
I do want to talk about the goaltending though, because I
Fine.
was
I just want you to
surprised.
answer that question first, though. Have you ever seen that in any
No.
No.
No, but and I think it was just part of the decision making, and kind of where I was going with that is that before the game, I really expected them to put Carter Hart in, and I
Yeah.
thought it was weird. I still think it was very weird, but on the other hand, Felix Sandstrom, I thought played pretty well and made some incredible saves in this game, and
He did.
I
That
I
last goal
hope
maybe wasn't his best.
True, but I do think that it maybe did him a little bit of some small favors, in terms of, you know, kind of in a Travis Konechny way of just kind of dotting i's and crossing t's,
Yeah.
especially because he might be on the open market,
Mhm.
and so, maybe the team was trying to do him a favor and
Mhm.
say, "We'll put you out there," and that's a possibility, and I hadn't really considered that before the game, but as the game went on and I saw how he was playing, I thought, "Well, maybe there's something to this here."
Yeah, he could be. Could be.
Going back to the OT, I do think it was kind of funny that, first off, they had to do the 1 forward 2D overtime
Of
structure
course.
because Braun was out there and they
Right.
needed another defenseman
Right.
to play, so I didn't really fault them for it this time because there was some method to the madness there.
Okay. That's
But
fair.
I just thought it was, like, kinda funny at the same
It was
time
funny.
because
I got a chuckle out of it.
yeah,
It
because 'cause
wasn't
we've been
lost on
sorta harping on that all season long, and the
Yeah,
fact
yeah.
that The Flyers just had struggled so much in OT this season, and then their last 2 games they win in overtime, which is funny in and of itself.
It is, no doubt.
But at any rate, I do think that it was a weird game in a pile of weird games in the NHL across the league, with
Yeah,
the Devils coming back versus Washington, but the Canes won the division anyway.
right. All
Um,
that. It just
Montreal almost won against Boston. Nashville got that OT winner against the Wild after it didn't matter for them. And then the Pens losing to Columbus, like just putting a crap icing on the cupcake of this season for the
yeah,
Pens.
their whole glacier,
And
glacier
it
melted under their feet.
it did. And then it hurt Columbus too to
Yeah,
win that game.
yeah.
It was just bizarre. Very bizarre night. That's the second to last night of the NHL season. There's a couple of games left tonight, but we have a bunch of hot takes on this season, and we are going to get to them next. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check. Just know that that part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, before we get to our hot takes, just want to give you a quick Phantoms update. Unfortunately, they lost to Bridgeport on Wednesday. Another weird game, 6 combined goals in the third period in that one between the two teams, but that puts the Phantoms back in the 4th place spot as of today. They face Charlotte tonight and Hershey tomorrow. Springfield have 3 games left. Providence versus Springfield is on Sunday. That could determine things. So we will report back next Tuesday on our Phantoms Tuesday with how everything played out and where the Phantoms stand heading into the Calder Cup playoffs for the AHL. As for the Flyers, they finished the season 31, 38, and 13, officially the 7th worst in the NHL. So that means the Flyers will either have the 1st, the 2nd, the 7th, 8th, or 9th pick in the draft to be determined on May 8th. And it's been a weird season, Russ. I think weird is the best word I have to describe it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I have this gut feeling they'll either be 7 or 9. But I know some fans wanted them to have a better chance than that and more ping pong balls. They chose to go a different way, so that's the way it sort of ended up. It's weird that the coach didn't end up behind the bench. I don't understand it. It's weird that Tony DeAngelo gets scratched the last 5 games. We're not expecting him back next year now based on that. Can't say you couldn't have predicted that because it's Tony DeAngelo, but I would still say it was a little surprising. This is the way things go sometimes at the end of seasons, and sometimes it's just not pretty. And there's a lot of things going on with the Flyers. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things up in the air. I know there was this ton of optimism on the broadcast. I don't share a lot of that same optimism because I see what's in front, and I've covered enough teams to know that if nothing else, you've got to overcome the cap. And, that's not being talked about in Flyers land right now.
Well, I think as far as, how we're feeling in this very moment, I would say, like I said, it's been a weird season, but
Mhm.
also I just feel like I feel like there's a blank slate in front of us. I have no idea what
I
is
agree with that.
going to transpire. There's so many, like you said, moving pieces and parts right now
Yes.
that literally anything could happen, I think. And so there's a lot of trepidation when that is the case, but there's also opportunity. And so it could go in any direction. And so I feel a little unsteady as well.
Oh, unsteady is a good word. I mean, there's one thing that I'd like to point out since I generally look at statistics and things, and uh, they're right now the Flyers are the fourth worst shooting percentage in the league, and the same teams that we talked about that are the lottery teams, other than Calgary, are the same teams that are in that boat, and they really need to work on this, like really, 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 because even if you're not sure what next season's going to be. If you improve your shot percentage, now again, they're around 9%. The top of the league was like 11.8. You're never going to be at 11.8, but if you can improve by a half a percent, that's a lot more goals going your way. And it makes me wonder. John Tortorella said that he wants guys to stick around this year. Well, if they stick around, you would hope that they have a shooting coach with them this summer and a few of those things, because it's not just one guy or two guys. I don't even want to single out anybody anymore because the whole team was at that number. You could look at Cam York, you could look at Owen Tippett, you could look at a lot of different guys who struggled hitting the net, and that's a big deal in this league.
Yeah, so speaking of John Tortorella, just, total gut here, what kinda grade do you give him for this season?
Uh, like the same one that Haley did, a C minus, because he didn't fully install the culture that he wanted because there were guys that bucked it. He, I think, started off really strong, then it leveled out a little bit, and then I think even he realized it's a much tougher job than what he was. Right around January, I think, is when it hit him that this is worse than I thought it was going to be. And so I think all of a sudden he reset expectations for himself and the organization a bit, and now,
There was around the time of the letter, right?
yes, and now it's kind of like he's not going to allow himself to think that Couturier and Atkinson are going to be fully healthy and back next year, which I don't blame him, because that's something that again, the biggest thing the Flyers have done the last 2 years is hoping players will be back, like Ryan Ellis, and it's just at some point you have to just see it, and if you don't see it, you can't plan for it. So a lot of that is weird, and the fact that the coach has already drawn up lineups next year with some of the guys that are out um, is odd to me because he didn't talk about any possible additions. All he talked about were subtractions, and to me, that's a little weird. You know that your whole team is not going to be comprised of what you have here. If it is, then Danny Briere is not going to have to do anything over the summer because all he's going to be doing is trying to move bad contracts and get draft picks. And everybody you see, there might be three or four missing, and then you're going to fill it in with phantoms. We know that that's not going to happen, but that's sort of the impression that he gave. Like, hey, I've got these guys that they're no longer in my lineup, but like, who are you replacing them with, John? Like, it's just that all stuff is weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, keeping sort of the focus on this season that has passed, I think you're right that there was this shift in Tortorella and what his expectation for the season was going to be. And I think that's where he lost the ability to communicate effectively
Hmm.
because he knew there had to be a shift, but he didn't know to what for a little bit. And I think, while in the first half of the season, even if you didn't like what he was doing or saying, you knew where everything stood.
Yes.
And I felt like after the letter and, once he kind of figured out he had to change direction, there wasn't as clear communication, I think, to it made it seem like players didn't understand where they stood, sometimes, and things would change, like, just the emotional shifts of who was in and who was in the doghouse,
Right.
I think was a bit of a whirlwind, and so that's where I think my biggest problem is that there wasn't like he didn't give people enough of a chance
Right.
to a large degree. So that is my biggest criticism
Mhm.
of Tortorella, but I think he did a lot of good things too,
No,
as
he did some
far
good things,
as
no question.
and a few guys developed really nicely this season, I think. So, pros and cons, but I
Mhm.
think the cons kind of outweighed the pros to a slight degree, in my opinion. So maybe I would give him a B minus instead of a C or C minus, um, but definitely good and bad there. Do you have like one thing about this season that was the weirdest thing?
It's how it just ended. Like, the season just ended with the coach not being behind the bench. That is the weirdest thing. The It's symbolic, like, the coach is supposed to be behind the bench. He is the leader of those guys, and the fact that he isn't was just weird to see. Like, I don't get it. So, that was what's
Yeah,
weird.
I mean, there are many weird things, so there's
Yeah,
a lot to choose from here.
there
I
are.
think for me, is this maybe a little niche, but the weirdest thing for me was the waiver wire pickups that are no longer with the team. I think there are so many, and Lucas Sedlak bouncing and,
Yeah,
and then, Kiefer Bellows getting picked up and he's the one that stuck around, but
right,
like clearly was in the doghouse. So what did that
yeah,
matter? And it was just Zach McEwen is now off to greener pastures. Like it's just a weird, weird season as far as, random pickups and roster
you
tweaks.
lost the Nick Sealer bet again, I won it as far as how many games played.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. All right. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of our end of season hot takes, including some specific player thoughts coming up next. All right, Russ. So, knowing what we know now and knowing that there's this big blank whiteboard for this team, who are your keepers on this team? Not who will they, but who are your keepers?
Uh, Noah Cates, Morgan Frost, still Ivan Provorov, Carter Hart. Those are the main ones. After that, anything's up for grabs. Owen Tippett, you keep. I think that's pretty obvious. I just didn't say him quick enough, but anybody else is up for grabs, like they just are. And I um I look at it like if a team calls me and they're going to give me a really good offer for somebody that I wasn't sure if I'm going to trade, I probably have to do it. Like that's how I'd have to be this offseason.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Carter Hart is a keeper for me. In addition to most to those names that you said,
Hmm.
the interesting factor for me is Sean Couturier because I would have said like if he's healthy going into next season, which it seems like he will be, unless something weird happens over the summer, which knock on wood, I don't know, could happen. But I think that if he's healthy and somebody wants to take a chance on him and you can get a good return. I mean, 7.75 for a guy like him for a 1C is a good deal.
Yeah, but the only thing
So,
is he hasn't played, so nobody's going to do it
I
because they
know.
haven't seen him in 2 years.
I know, and
Almost
that's the
2 years,
thing. So that's why he sort of feels like a keeper, but
right?
it's not like 100% set in
Right.
stone for me, but I think he feels like a keeper. I don't even want to talk about Cam Atkinson because who the
Right.
hell knows? But yeah. Now on the other side of the fence, who do you trade no matter the return? Like even if it's a bag of pucks or future considerations, like who do you get off the roster?
I mean, Tony D'Angelo's first guy off. Like that's symbolically, he has to be the first guy gone. Even to the point where that's the guy I have to buy out because it's only a 1 year. Then that's the guy I have to buy out. But hopefully, if I eat half the salary, someone will take him for some sort of draft pick, and that's fine. I'm just not giving up a draft pick to get rid of him. I'm not doing that for anybody. Then the next guy's
Mhm.
Kevin Hayes, but I don't think there's a huge market for Kevin Hayes. So again, you're now going to have salary retention for at least a couple of years of his deal because I think he has 3 left.
Yep.
And yeah, again, if I just get a draft pick, fine, whatever that might be, I'll do it. but I don't hold out great hope that that's going to happen. I'll shop around Travis Sanheim because maybe
Yep.
somebody is still looking for him and thinks he could do better elsewhere. Because right now he's been shaky. He's been very, very shaky. I'll listen to offers on Risto. I feel
Yep.
like while he has improved, I don't necessarily feel like he's a keeper here because again, you might not get a better year than this out of him, and you might need to trade him for the value he's at. So we'll see. I mean, he's not going to hurt you if he stays. So those are guys that I'm really focused on. And then connect me if I got a great deal, I have to listen to it because for all intents and purposes, I mean, even if in a couple of years the cap goes up, let's say 3 to 5 million, is he going to be the guy you focus on to spend that extra money? I don't know because again, he'll be a couple of years older. While he's having a good year, and this is probably his career year, I would. This looks like his career year to me. Again, you look at him, a 60-point guy. I know he was hurt at some games, and people can say whatever, but he's not an 80-point guy. And so, like, if he is your best top liner, let's say, and we don't know, I don't know what's going to happen with Couturier, then I might need the money more than I need Travis Konechny because, again, he's a really good second liner for somebody. So he's going to be a tough decision at some point, but it might not happen this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, as far as the who do you trade no matter the return, for me, that is definitely Tony DeAngelo, like, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, like, I will take a bag of pucks for that guy
yeah,
as long as somebody will take him in the salary. Like,
yeah.
that is fine. As far as, who on the team has, like, the right vibes for what we want the future of this team to look like, just going on vibes, for me, that is 100% Scott Lawton. I don't want him going anywhere. I know it's possible, and it's not like it's a make or break thing in reality, but just based on vibes, I think Scott Lawton is the Philadelphia Flyers and exactly what I want out of a Philadelphia Flyers
Sure. Yeah.
player.
Based on vibes, him, Morgan Frost for sure. I think
Oh,
Frost,
and Tippett.
yeah, Tippett, but Tippett really does have to improve, and because he's not going to get these kind of minutes every.
No, but we're not talking about
Just the
improving.
vibe
We're
is
just
good.
talking about vibes.
All right, that's fine. I'll give you those three.
All right. I kind of also think Risto has Flyers vibes, but
Oh, no, he's like
uh
in between. It's like
yeah.
he doesn't have any vibe right now, to be honest.
Well, that's probably true to some
You don't hear
degree.
much out of Risto, which sometimes is great, but
Yeah.
you just don't.
Yeah. Um and then who do you think has made the most of their opportunities this season?
Good question. I think Frost has. I think to some degree Cam York, but he really did slip the last like 3 weeks. But I think to some degree Cam York, uh, you know, Tippett for sure because he
Yeah.
got all the ice time. Um, maybe Sam Urson, but I do think they're building him up too much right now. I would say those guys.
Yeah, I think Noah Cates, I think making the position change to center, I think that was a real
I don't know. I
challenge.
don't feel like that's permanent. I'm not there yet.
Well, but I think in terms of this season and what he was
Okay,
asked to do and what
that's
kind
fair.
of ice time he was given, I think he did a tremendous job, like,
He did a really
really
good job, no question.
buckling down and learning the center position or relearning the center
I feel
position.
like he could score more though if he's not a center. That's the thing.
Yeah, that may be true. I just think he did, I think above and beyond,
He did.
when he this season, and so I appreciate that out of him. I think, there are lots more things to talk about with this team in this off season. We will, of course, be doing that, but if you out there have your own hot takes at the end of this season, let us know. You can post it as a comment on this show on YouTube. You can email us or tweet us at Locked On Flyers, comment on our Instagram post at the same handle, and maybe we'll talk about some of them on the show if you send them our way. Next week, we're going to get into the locker cleanout news, Danny Briere's end of season presser. We've got the Phantoms playoff preview, more prospect profiles, so much leading up to the draft lottery on May 8th, and then the draft itself, free agency. It's going to be a wild ride this summer, and I hope you'll stick with us for that ride. We will have a lot of good stuff your way. As a reminder, we do always want to hear from you. So like I said, pop those questions our way. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now make your next listen Game to Game NHL. It's every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's on the Locked On NHL feed anywhere you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everybody.